So the Ravens just lost J.K. Dobbins. Now the question is, are they in trouble, especially with everything else happening to their team? Let's talk about it. Here, coming up, about 20 seconds. What's good, everybody? It's your boy Jay here with Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. And in this video, we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens and all the woes that they're thinking about. Catastrophes have no place. So in Baltimore, we're dealing with a lot of serious situations. First, the preseason started off with Marquise Brown being hurt with a hamstring injury roughly a month ago, and he's still down and not really doing very well with that.
And I accidentally drafted him in my $50 league. Well, that's my fourth receiver, but still every position counts.
Every position counts. So I got to figure that out. You do. Their first round draft pick, Rashad Bateman, may miss their opener after having surgery on his groin. So another soft tissue injury. That seems a little disturbing. And then Sunday, J.K. Dobbins goes out, hits the ground, grabs his knee, and it looks like a season-ending ACL tear. He is on the IR, so they do expect him to be done for the year. And so the Ravens are dealing with a lot of stuff. And then you had reports that came out on top of this that an NFL executive thinks that the NFL has figured out our boy Lamar Jackson. So, Jimmy, with these plethora of injuries here, let's start with this. Is it fair to say that the Ravens are in trouble?
The Ravens are in serious trouble. You mentioned Marquise Brown and the injury that he was already dealing with. Hollywood Brown around here and around where he's from.
Around here. Around here.
R's are tripping me up today. Right? So, yeah, you have that. You're dealing with that. Rashad Bateman, like you mentioned, you're dealing with that. So, on top of that, the last thing you needed was another major injury to a starter, especially an offensive starter, especially given that now you have people talking about, like you said, that Lamar Jackson has been figured out. So, I don't know if you knew this or not. A lot of you in the audience listening or watching this, wherever you watch our videos, probably didn't know that Baltimore was working on a preseason game winning streak. I think leading up into this game, they had won 19 preseason games in a row, and I think they were going for the record.
They did, and they got the record.
And they got the record, 20 preseason games in a row by beating the Washington football team 37-3. And
good God.
Yeah. So
Huntley was eating.
He was. He actually looked like Lamar out there running around at times. But I hope it was worth it, John Harbaugh. I hope it was worth it, you losing your ready to emerge as a star running back, second-year running back, in pursuit of this record, because you got the record. So I hope it was worth it, because now you have absolutely no chance to compete in the AFC playoffs just by losing him, because he's such an all-purpose back, because he's a good blocker, because he's a good runner, because he does so many things. And when you combine that with what Lamar Jackson can do and what you're trying to do in the passing game by adding these receivers that you did in the draft, in addition to Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State, he would have made your offense that much more dynamic. And you're going to need that dynamic quality when you come up against a Kansas City Chiefs team that you can't figure out, as well as the Buffalo Bills. And hell, you may even run into the Tennessee Titans for a third playoffs in a row?
Right.
So I hope it was worth it. This was a huge mistake. And when John Harbaugh talked about this, one of the things that he said in order to defend it is that the Ravens were among the teams who played their starters the least in the preseason. Well, why does any team not play their starters in the preseason? It's for two reasons. One, because they're veterans and they don't need it. I understand J.K. Dobbins, you wouldn't consider him a veteran quite yet.
Only a second year.
Yeah, only in his second year. But he's a professional. He's good. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's in shape. He's going to be would have been ready to go by week one. So it's either that or it's to prevent injury. So if you were already playing them the least, then you had some idea of what you were trying to prevent from happening. Right. So then if you're doing that, it makes no sense to put them in there in what really should be a meaningless preseason game, but you made it meaningful because you wanted that record. And now I hope it was worth it. So this is a huge mistake. This has something Baltimore Ravens fans have to be sick right now. And I know there are more important things in the world to worry about. This is just football, so it's not that serious. But as far as being a Ravens fan on Sunday, going into this, you knew how important J.K. Dobbins was. And now that he's not there, you know that your team has no shot to win a Super Bowl.
I don't know about that. Ball is life, so I understand people being upset and everything with that. But, honestly, I think it's unfair. I don't I think they're fine. I think they'll be just fine. This is one reason why. One, Vegas odds. You know what the odds are for the Ravens to win the AFC North?
No.
They're still a plus 115. It didn't even move when they lost J.K. Dobbins. So Vegas believes they'll be just fine. They believe that they're still the favorites to win it with the Cleveland Browns right behind them at plus 140. I agree with Vegas. I don't think it'll be a problem. Mainly because I don't think the NFL has figured out Lamar Jackson. And we're going to talk about him a lot more when it comes to that, and this executive that thinks this mess. But their running game is literally Lamar Jackson and then a stable of backs. Gus Edwards is going to get the bulk of the carries like he did last year. Dobbins, of course, was a little bit more versatile out there, but they'll probably pick up somebody else. Maybe grab a Todd Gurley, make him more of a Thunder-type runner. Maybe go get Adrian Peterson, something like that. Because I heard that they had Gurley there. I think they brought him in for free agency, but Gurley decided not to jump in. He wasn't ready yet, and he said he wasn't taking anything. But they're going to call him back, bring him back in. Gurley's had some time to rest that knee. He'll get out there, and I think he'll be just fine. I think that we're underestimating the abilities of this team. The Ravens, to me, have improved defensively. I think they're going to be better prepared this season than they were before. And at the same time, I don't get why we think that Lamar Jackson is quote unquote handicapped out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, all the Ravens have to do now is add to their passing game. Like, he has so much more potential in the passing game, in my personal opinion, that they just have to tap. Now they have a reason to. You ain't got as many running backs. So you may as well start throwing the ball more instead of relying heavily on the run like they were before.
Well, with the Lamar piece, when this executive said that the Ravens have been figured out, what do you think he was talking about? Well, that Lamar has been figured out. What do you think he was talking about? Do you think he's talking about more Lamar as a passer or more Lamar as a runner?
Let me see. Fowler from ESP, Jeremy Fowler, was saying this. He said a lot of people around the league that I speak to that are talking a little slick. They're saying this might be the year that everyone figures out Lamar Jackson. So this is the year. They're sort of feeling right now he can definitely prove that wrong, but I think there's a bit of pressure on him right now, in which we need to talk about pressure on quarterbacks. We'll talk about that in another segment another day. But they're thinking that this is the year that everybody's going to figure him out. Now, without J.K. Dobbins, to be absolutely honest, I think that makes it a lot harder to figure him out. They're going to have to be more creative with things. They don't have that stable of running backs because they don't have Mark Ingram anymore. Now they don't have J.K. Dobbins. With just Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson, don't you think that the Ravens are going to actually, I mean, isn't Greg Roman going to be smart and realize that, hey, let me switch things up to make it tough?
Well, see, I don't understand what you're saying. So you're saying that without J.K. Dobbins, that Lamar Jackson is going to be easier or harder to figure out?
Harder. Well, I don't think that he's going to be. I don't think you can figure him out, period. His athleticism is not going to go anywhere until he gets older. He's only 24 years old, so all he's going to do is evolve as a passer. So I think if we were asking fair or unfair on that, I think it's extremely unfair to believe that anybody in the league has figured him out. They haven't figured out Lamar Jackson. They may have figured out Greg Roman, because you got to remember, this offense is similar in design that I've seen from experts mention as what he did with Kaepernick. The only difference is he had Kaepernick throwing more bombs, but Jackson, to me, has more weapons than they had in San Francisco at the time.
Well, okay, so off that, I would say that it's probably made it a little bit easier to figure out Lamar without J.K. Dobbins. I don't think that they have. I don't think that they will this season. But if that's the goal, and obviously it is if every defensive coordinator they're going to face the season, then yeah, it makes it just a little bit easier, because when I think about the difference between Lamar handing the ball off or at least running a read option with J.K. Dobbins versus Gus Edwards, running it with J.K. Dobbins is harder to figure out, because J.K. Dobbins, as you said, he's a more versatile running back than Gus Edwards is. Gus Edwards is pure power. He's pure north and south. He finds a hole, and then he makes the cut. That's all. So you know exactly what Gus Edwards is going to do. You still don't know exactly what Lamar is going to do, but when you have Lamar not knowing exactly what he's going to do, and then you have Dobbins, or you had Dobbins not knowing what he was going to do, that's what makes it more difficult, and that's where they're going to miss J.K. Dobbins. They may not miss him so much in the regular season, but I think that in the playoffs, when it's just inches of difference, when just that one little piece, that one little dynamic piece that you normally have or that you would have had, you don't have anymore, that can make all the difference between going home and advancing in the playoffs. So I think it'll be felt a little bit more there than in the regular season. But without J.K. Dobbins, it's still going to be a little bit easier to figure out Lamar. But I don't think that I don't think that they can because everyone knows, in a sense, let's talk about the running angle. You know how fast he is. You know how he likes to run. You know how he chooses to run.
How elusive he is.
Yeah, but no one, you can't coach that. You can't coach tackling that. You cannot stop that.
You can't scout team it. That's the biggest thing is you cannot scout team a Lamar Jackson. You can put, and I was listening to Pro Football Focus, and they made mention of this, and this makes sense. That teams, their way of scouting Lamar Jackson was to put their fastest wide receiver back there, quarterback, and say, hey, give me your best moves. Do you really think that they're going to have the same moves as a Lamar Jackson, though? That's the thing. Dude's a unicorn, literally. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, their offense is built around power run. And I get why they do that because Lamar Jackson is so elusive. Lamar Jackson's also a quarterback. I mean, I've never seen a running back throw for 3,000 yards in a season 2 years in a row, nor have I seen a running back help lead his team to only 7 losses in the 3 years he's been the quarterback. I mean, he's 30-7. So your assessment is, I agree with your assessment on this. Regular season, they'll be fine. They're going to win the AFC North. I don't think there's unless they have an injury to Lamar Jackson.
I don't know. I think that with this injury, I can't put them above the Browns, and I'm struggling to put them over Pittsburgh.
I can put them over both. I don't like Pittsburgh, and we'll talk about that in the preview show.
Yeah,
because I don't like Big Ben.
No, I'm fine with that. With Pittsburgh, I'm totally fine with that, but I'm not fine with putting them over Cleveland. I'm not going to do.
They're still the Browns. I need the Browns to prove me wrong. But that doesn't mean the Browns are going to have a good season. My point is, I think that the Ravens top to bottom is better than the Browns as a unit.
What do you mean? So like just team for team, player for player,
coach
roster
for coach.
For roster, coach for coach. I can't do it. I cannot do that.
I give it to Baltimore. I'm going to give it to Baltimore. I can do it. That's me. And maybe I may be wrong.
We'll get more into that.
We'll get deeper into that in the preview, but
yeah.
But to wrap up, I do believe that it's ridiculous to think that the league has figured out Lamar Jackson. You can say that the league is maybe trying to figure out Greg Roman because what Lamar Jackson is doing is calling the plays that's given to him. And unless unless we're trying to compare him to Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, some quarterbacks like that change the plays constantly, he's up there with the great, with the good players, the good, maybe not great yet quarterbacks in the league today. Because he is going out there executing on the game plan that's given to him to the tune of 30-7 in the regular season.
So you know what? If I'm Greg Roman and if I'm Lamar Jackson right now, that's exactly what I want to try to develop because the ability to do that, you really can't ever quite figure out because Brady, Manning, Breeze, as they got older, well, maybe with the exception of Manning because he had the neck injury and such, that's the part that you never figure out. You can't figure out exactly how I'm going to think and adjust based on what I see from you pre-snap and to some degree post-snap. So I think that over time, Lamar will develop that even better. And I think that he shouldn't wait until he can no longer do that to get his fadeaway. Yeah. He needs to do it now because eventually that time is going to come to where he's not going to be as fast or as elusive as he is now. And by then, you want to have that curveball. You want to have that second move. And we see this all the time in the NBA where this player who's either bigger, stronger, or faster than everybody else has been able to become a star based upon that without developing other parts of their game. Ben Simmons. So I think that if you want to do that, you do that now because even if you figure out when I like to run, even if you figured out passing concepts, you can't figure out my mind and me being able to diagnose what you're doing in real time. There's no plan for that.
I agree with you with that, but that's going to be on the coaching staff. I put that 100% on Roman, Harbaugh to figure that portion of it out. They need to add somebody because I say this on that. That was the big knock on Peyton Manning in the playoffs. Of course, he's a genius when it comes to running the plays. He would go out there with basically a skeleton set up and figure out how he wanted to look. But in the playoffs, that was a lot easier to figure out. Hence why he only went to 2 Super Bowls. Well, 3 Super Bowls with initially. That was always the thing about him is that teams had a better understanding. Ed Reed tricked him in the playoffs to make him go where he wanted him to go. But I'm just saying that's what a lot of teams started to figure out about Peyton Manning was his genius was kind of the same. It's not like he had a NFL playbook in his head. He had concepts that he wanted to do, and he would adjust. But at a certain point, you run out of memory at some point. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody has tendencies.
Exactly. And then they followed his tendencies. And now was exactly. That's probably the best way to say it. So, Lamar, he's going to develop that game. He's only 24 years old. I just want to keep emphasizing that. He's 24. Let the 24-year-old continue to do what 24-year-olds do. grow, especially when you're actually good at the game.
Mm-hmm. But my God, I mean, I think we have to temper expectations now, given what he's going to be facing when you're not going to have your top 2 receivers or your running back before game 1. I mean, God forbid something happened to Mark Andrews.
Right.
Then what are you going to do?
Knock on wood.
Exactly.
Stop that.